Brian Lehrer on WNYC. Okay, when do you choose audiobooks over print books? And that category that I mentioned is getting a lot of response. People who read their own memoirs or autobiographies. Listener writes, I listened to Sinead O'Connor read her own autobiography. It was incredible. Another one, I only listen to audiobooks that are memoirs read by their authors, for example, Barbara Streisand and Lena Dunham. So those are coming in. Allison in Bergen County, you're on WNYC. Hi, Allison.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I'm very fired up over this topic. I listen to audiobooks continuously. I do still read print, but I last night just finished the Rachel Goldberg Polin book, and she read it herself. Her husband read the last chapter. It's a whole other experience having with what she went through with her son being kidnapped and murdered in captivity. It's such a different experience having her. It's so heavy when you hear her do it. It doesn't do it justice to just read it, because I did start reading it in print. Also, a couple weeks ago, I finished this book, Eternal. It's historical fiction, and it takes place in Italy. So the actors who read each chapter, it's all in Italian accents, and it just takes you there in a different way than a print book does.
That's so interesting. You know, there's a little micro debate out there, a low-stakes debate. Does listening to an audiobook count as reading the book? There's a similar one, is YouTube television. But does listening to a book count as reading it? Have you ever thought about that low-stakes debate question?
Yes, and I'm full of guilt because I did not earn the status that I read this book. I have to say I listened to that book, but it's like I'm lying when I say I read it. But it's the same thing. I just feel really guilty that I didn't sit still and read it.
Yeah. Allison, thank you very much. Yeah, and on that, here's a text from a retired librarian who says, as a retired librarian, I'd like to say that listening to a book and reading a book are two different experiences. When one reads a book, the reader's own mind is making pictures in their head as they read and filling in the voices themselves. When listening to a book, the reader's mind is being engaged by someone else's voice. Maura in the Bronx, you're on WNYC. Looks like you have an opinion on that low-stakes debate. Huh, Maura? Hi.
Hello. Yes, thank you for taking my call. I actually read audiobooks because I am totally blind. And so for me, I think reading audiobooks counts as reading. I do understand they are different experiences when I read an audiobook as opposed to when I read in Braille, but it's not as easy for me to get Braille as it used to be. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, when I read an audiobook, it's very different than when I listen to music, or even, you could say that when I watch TV, it's an audio experience, and it's very different from an audiobook. When I typically use an audiobook, I don't do other things, like I don't do the dishes or vacuum or whatever. I focus on the book. And it would be fascinating to know whether, I've heard, and I'm not a scientist, but I've heard that when someone reads Braille, that the visual cortex of the brain is activated. And I wonder whether that would be the case for someone who primarily uses audiobooks.
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, and I am by no means qualified to answer it. Maybe somebody else is. Time is going by so fast on this. Maura, thank you for your call. A couple of more texts. Listener writes, I listen to books with my kids in the car. It's a great way to get long-form content in their brains. Another one, I love books on tape. As a super slow reader who finds the activity soporific, look it up. Books on tape are the perfect way to consume literature. Let's get one more listener in here who makes a distinction between some kinds of books and other kinds of books. Wendy in the Bronx, you're on WNYC. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, good morning. I have a great difficulty reading nonfiction. It just doesn't compute. So I listen to it, and it's easier to take in and to absorb. And then I can always, back up 10, 30, 40 seconds if I need to listen to something again. I could do the same thing with a book, but it just doesn't compute the same way. But with fiction, I read the books. Part of it is that I don't need to take in as much as I want to take in. When I'm reading nonfiction, I want to learn something. And when I'm reading fiction, I'm, in a way, entertaining myself.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I appreciate it. You're the last voice we'll get on. Here's the last text. Humans have shared stories and epics for millennia with their voices. Listening to a book is a special and of equal importance to reading text, at least in the opinion of that listeners. Thank you, listeners, for all your calls and texts on reading versus audio. Keep listening to WNYC because Allison is coming right up.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.